Tractate Eruvin, page 4. The subject of today, first and foremost, it's called shiurim, meaning measurement. Some examples. Someone doing the Day of Atonement, doing Yom Kippurim, he or she feels tremendous need for food. You give them a food, but there are measurement. If someone eats certain food intentionally, we measure it in a certain way. It's a question if it's rabbinic, it's a biblical, the small measurement, etc. You can go to many more ideas of measurement that it was not clear, in a way it was ambiguous, the way that it's written in the Torah. And here we enter the domain of a new category. So far we know a concept of written Torah, we know the concept of oral Torah, but there is another concept we'd like to share with you today. It's Halacha leMoshe miSinai, which means it's a tradition that we believe we receive it and transmit it by the ancient Moses in Sinai. And those traditions are not juxtapositions, are not something that you take several points in several ideas and compare them. It is, which we believe, a tradition that was transmitted orally. Example to the importance of our discussions. When we have a mikveh, a ritual bath, for someone that needs to purify it. If it's a women, for example, at the period and then the time of ritual purification. For example, to have a certain partition between the person who dug himself, etc. Measurement between raining water and other water. Another avenue, in a case of corpse, what is the minimum measurement to determine impurity? What do I mean by that? We studied in the past, if a kohen, a priest, come in contact with a dead body is the issue, he's not allowed to. So we explained the Torah used the word tent or term of roof. But then we enter the domain of measurement, since we are not sure what size of the corpse in that domain carries a contamination or carries level of impurity that can transmit it to someone like the priest, like the kohen, and make him impure. So I'm just using several examples of our discussions, and now back to our original subject, which is we talk about measurement in the mavoi, in the alleyway. If you go to some old developments, city like New York City downtown, Baltimore, Washington downtown, and many other cities in the United States as well as elsewhere, you see that you have those developments with houses, and you have a alleyway in between those developments that have a crossroad, main crossroad, with almost a highway, which enter the domain of public domain, private domain. And here we are with our discussion, which a special need to have a care to recognize that this is a private domain, and is a specific requirement, such as making a tzuat petach, lechi, korah, which means crow's beam, and other measurement to determine that this is a private and this is a public domain. So with that in mind, we need to have measurement sometimes, since we lose the great moment of opportunity when this sign is not clear to people who walk in that area, such as if the crow's beam is too high, if it's stepped by too many people and you don't see it on the floor, etc. So all of that come out the idea of studying measurement, understanding the concept of measurement, seeing how we derive the concept of measurement, and later, God willing, we see the practical halachot in conjunction to measurement. In order to study the page 4, I just want you to please go to the last line of 3b. And the Gemara tells us, Meitivei. It's a discussion, an objection to our previous session, and those who have a chance, please review our previous session to understand the subject. In short, we talk about a mixture in a person's vine property, vineyard property, and we have a certain measurement when it's come to handbreadth. So the Gemara said, "Kol amot she'amru chachamim be'ama bat shisha ubilvad shelo yihu mechuvanot," which means all the measurement that the sages tells us when it's come to a cubit of 6 handbreadth, it's provided that they are not precisely a cubit. And we explained yesterday, let's just read it first. Bishlama lerava ki echad elevian alalu sachokot v'alalu tzavot elaba ekashia. We explained kil'aim in a mixture that we have a different size of measurement. Let's talk first in a very simple way. When you use the term sochek, meaning laugh, it's extending. Atzev, meaning someone's very sad, is decreasing, depressing, a small measurement. If you take any size of average person, you see a different size in fingers and hands. When you compare them, you see a large and a small, typically. So when we speak about numbers of handbreadth, there is a number 5 and is a number 6. So the question is, what exactly Abaye meant, because it looks like is two bright thoughts, two different sources that contradicted each other in a sense of application of measurement. So the Amar lach Abaye responded that he said, Eima amat kil'aim be'ama bat shisha, which means we have here a juxtaposition. We have in one hand the measurement of sukkah and mavoi. On the other hand, we have the measurement of kil'ai. To understand it, let me share with you a picture we discussed yesterday just to make sure that we all clear in this subject. Here is a sukkah, and when it's come to sukkah, we have to have a certain size, a certain measurement. For example, the key point in sukkah is the schach, is the cover. One of the conditions in the sukkah is that they have to have, in a sense, less shade than sun. Because otherwise it's a problem, it's not real sukkah, it's getting close to the permanent home. So in that sense, if the part that is fully covered exceeded a certain measurement, which is in that sense 4 handbreadth, Rashi tells us that it makes it invalid. And in that sense, when we discussed before that the issue of mavoi, and we explained in a mavoi, it's the alleyway, and it's between the public domain and the private domain. In order to make it recognizable, we need to have a certain measurement up to the 20s. So this, we explain, it's applied to average handbreadth of 5. Now, when we discuss in kil'aim, if you remember, we discussed the vineyard and the size and the bold area. If you remember yesterday in our discussion between the fence, and so when it's come to all of that, we said that it has to have 6, which means, again, if you measure it and you compare, so when kil'aim, it's the atzevot, is depressed, is the small size of 6, versus sukkah and mavoi, when you're measuring, it's in a sense 5, but 5 in the largest measurement.
Since when measuring kil'aim, you're measuring a minimum size, and when you're measuring for the entrance to a mavoi, you're measuring a maximum.
Correct.
So by using the 5 for the maximum and the 6 for the minimum, you're essentially close. Being a little stricter.
Correct.
With each one.
That's exactly what the Rosh tells us. It's one of the rabbis named Rabbeinu Asher, and he said that one of the issues we have here is a very fine point. that you get to the larger of the 5 and the smaller of the 6, and it's getting very close to each other when it's measurement.
Right.
Soon you see how scrupulous we are with measurement, that it getting to, for example, carrying on Shabbat in the smallest tiny size. But we'll go to that.
But it sort of makes sense. I mean, in respect to sort of building fences, you want to make sure that if you're doing a minimum measurement, that you use a larger size, and when just to be sure. I mean, it protects you from violating
you're right. So v'hamidiktanei seifa. Since we said in the second clause of the Braita, רבן שמעון בן גמליאל אומר, כל אמות שמרו חכמים בכליים באמה בת 6 ובלבד שלא יהיו מצומצמות, מכלל דתנא קמא כל אמות קמא. Which means we derived the first clause in the Mishnah that said that it's not only in the kilaim, in a mixture, but it's also in a sukkah and mavoi. It's all applied to amot in a size of 6. So here we back to the old question that he said that every time the Torah used the term of amot, it's applied to 6. אמר לך אביי ולאו מעיקר רבן שמעון בן גמליאל דקאי כבתי, רבן שמעון בן גמליאל hold the same as I hold. Another אמרי כרבן שמעון בן גמליאל. I was the one who said that when you come to כלאיים, to measurement of כלאיים, it has to be 6. Rashi tells us in דיבור המתחיל לרבה, he said that according to Abaye, חכמים and רבן שמעון בן גמליאל hold the same as a Tanaic disputation, and it's all measured in the size of Amma 6, but socheket, which means in a sense the large one. So the big question is, here we have in one hand the kilaim, the mixture, on the other hand we have sukkah and mavoi, and sukkah and mavoi we said it's atzeva, it's the smallest side. Kilaim we said the large. So I said le'abaye vadai tanai. According to Abaye, for sure it's a different opinion among the Tanaim. Le'rava mileima tanai. So Rashi explained, mi amrinan Rabban Shimon Gel paliga le'lemeima ramat kilaim ba'ama bat 6. So you have to say, according to Rava, that this is, in a sense, Rabban Shimon Gamliel, you interpreted his word in that way. Maybe it's a different way. How? אמר לך רבא, רבן שמעון גמליאל לא, האטה להשמונה, נמת כלאיים לא יצמצם. רבן שמעון גמליאל here is not come to dispute or disagree. He come only to elaborate, to extrapolate, to express the meaning of כלאיים. And he wants to speak about kil'ain that has to be amma atzeva, that they have to be in a small one. So now they ask, V'leima amat kil'aim lo yitzamtzem amma bat 6. If you look carefully at the line in the Gemara, the whole line b'amma bat 6, it looks superfluous. Why do we need to say it? If you tell me amat kil'aim lo yitzamtzem, you should not make it a small size of kil'aim leme'utei mai. Why you needed the word b'amma bat 6? What's the purpose? It's enough that you just say the word amat kilaim lo yitzamtzem. So he said lav lemeute amat sukkah v'amat mavoi. You have to say that again. We compare, we juxtapose sukkah and mavoi lekilaim. So that's the word that Abaye said in the name of Rav Nachman. So Gemara said no, lo lemeute ama yesod v'ama sovev dichtiv el midot המזבח באמות אמה ואמה תופח וחקר אמה ואמה רוחב גאולה של הסולת סביב דרך האחד וזה גם המזבח. Ezekiel said in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 43, he said a line that when it's come to external altar, has to have a certain measurement. And I'm base my explanation on Rashi. Rashi used the word in Vezegav HaMizbeach, klomar be'ama ktana, and I explained it in my book, Biura klomar be'Rashi al Hashas. What does that mean? What's involved here in the size of Mizbeach? In short, because we are short in time, basically, the measurement we speak, when it's come to the Mizbeach, when it's come to the altar, it's expressed with amot, with the size of 6 handbreadth, that each of them it's amma vatofach, which means that it's equal to the small size of amma of 5 plus 1. In other words, you just if you look at the Rashi in Ezekiel, That's the way you measure all of them. Now, חק האמה זה יסוד. Now, let me share with you the picture so it will be clear. Yesod meaning the foundation. Is the camera show it clearly? Because everyone here see clear. Okay, this is the Yesod, this is the foundation. This is the Sovev, the part of the altar. This is external altar. And this is the top. Now, if you look at the measurement, you see that all of that, it's go to 5. Each of them, it's 1, and each part, it's coming out of that. So, you see here the measurement, it's the foundation. If you count the foundation, and you count this part, it's 5, but you see the story here, it's coming out at the top, it's coming out here, and it's coming out here. So all of that make it, according to Rashi, lav ban shishahem. It's not in a measurement of 6. Ve'amar rochav ze sovev. Sovev meaning, as you see here, that's the ama. You talk about coming around. Ugvula el sfata saviv elu akranot. You see, this is keren. Keren, it's like the corner of each one of the 4. So when you talk about the borderline of the top of the altar, so it's these 4 corners in each corner. They're all together. Each of them, it's ama, the heights, and ama length. That's the size of each corner. Veze gava mizbeach, and the back of the altar, ze mizbach hazahav. That's applied to what? To the golden altar. So the golden altar that stood inside the sanctuary, we use a small cubit to measure it. Now, since we discussed measurement, now we're going to expand our discussion, and you see a lot of halachic application from our upcoming discussion. Amar Rav Yechiya bar Ashi amar Rav, shiurin, when the rabbis come to give an exact definition of measurement, such as when you talk about olive bark, it's called kezait, in the prohibition of eating, such as, if you remember, we discussed in some cases is a malkod, in some cases it's an offering. So there is a minimum amount, or when it's come to dealing with corpse, there is a minimum amount that if the corpse, if the dead body is there, it's already carry contamination. So there is a certain measurement. So he said chatzitzin. Chatzitzin is like chatzitza. When a person needs to duck in a mikveh, she cannot, for example, use a watch, cannot use underwear. Has to be direct connection between the water and the body. So therefore, anything that it's partition, it's chotzetz, it's in between, is a problem. Umechitzin. When we talk about mechitza, about partition, you remember we talk about mavoy, alleyway on Shabbat, or we talk about other things that need partition. So halacha leMoshe miSinai. So that's incorporate with the oral teaching that it's from Sinai, but it's not direct source from the scripture. It's just halacha that we learn Moshe in Sinai. So that's what the Rambam said. Even we believe that the entire Torah is from Sinai, but this is something even deeper, that it transmitted orally. Now the Gemara asks question. Now let's make it clear. Shiurim doraita. You tell me measurement is only transmitted by Moses in Sinai? You can learn it directly from the Torah? And you want me to prove it? I can show you. Dichtiv, the Torah described the beauty of Eretz Israel in the book of Deuteronomy. It's in Dvarim, Deuteronomy, the Torah said in chapter 8, a description of Eretz Israel. And the Torah said, Eretz chita, usora, vegefen, utena, verimon, eretz shemen, udvash. This is the land of wheat and barley and the vine and pomegranates and fig and pomegranates and olive and palm trees. ואמר רב חנן come and tells us, כל הפסוק הזה לשיעורים נאמר. You know why the Torah gives us is the description of those items is not just the 7 species that Eretz Israel was blessed, it's also to derive from that the function of measurement, which means that we can derive measurement to many other halachic implications. Example, start with the first one, chita. The Torah said wheat. So what does that mean? Lichdetnan, we learn in the Tractate Negaim, page 13. Hanichnas lebait menuga, if someone his carry is a leper. If you read in the Torah, is a story about dermatology issues like hepatitis infections and things like that in our language, but it's basically someone who's a leper. He entered the domain of a house. So issue of contamination. So there are 2 categories. We said v'kelav al ktefav v'sandalatav v'dorav b'yadav hu ve'em tmeim me'yad. If he carries in his hand his clothing, he has shoes, and so then they become impure. Why? Because the Torah said in Vayikra in Leviticus 14, "Ve'abal habayit kol yemei exegoto idmar alav." Whatever entered that domain became impure until the purification in the evening time. היה לבוש כליו, וסנדליו ורגליו וטבעותיו באצבעותיו, הוא טמא מיד, והן תורים עד שישב בכדי אכילת פרס פרת חיטין. However, if he entered the domain while he was fully dressed, meaning he has his clothing on him, he has the shoes on, etc., so he is a different category. He entered to that domain, so he is impure. However, all of his dress, clothing, etc., it is a time measurement. And what they said, the time is that he can eat a size of a wheat bread. Why? Because the Torah used the word "Ve'ha'ochel babayis yichabez b'gadav," that someone eating that house needs to go to a laundry over his clothing. So it means that there is a certain time to make it happen, which means that there is a certain time for a person to eat such a thing. So they said velo patzorim, and it's not applied to barley measure. Why? Because in that sense it takes more time to eat a barley than they eat the wheat. Meisev, in those days, as you read soon in the Pesach, it's reclining, so it takes more time. It's not like standing in a cocktail and eating, it's reclining. So he's not preoccupied with anything else. Ve'ochel beliftan, so he incorporate another food with that food. So it's all related to the point of the word grain chita, that's the key point of measurement. So it's not just description of the land of Israel, it's also a measurement in the law of purity. The second one, in the 7 species, the Torah said seorah. Seorah, what is a barley? So what they want to say, that nan etzem ki seorah metameh b'magor masar v'no metameh b'oil. The Mishnah tells us in Aholot, chapter 2, that if you have a bone of a corpse, so there is a minimum measurement that you compare or juxtapose or use as a minimum measurement for carrying impurity. So if he has a measurement of a barley, so if he touch it or carry it, that's the minimum measurement. But when it's under the tent, and we explain the issue of contamination in the tent, so that's a different story. Why? Because if you use the entire body, that's for sure it become contaminated. That's not the issue. But if it's just to have part of the body, for example, the bone. So we said that in the bone of a body, Rashi tells us that there is a 248. Now half of that, and a little passing a half, is 125. So if we have, for example, that part, which is most of the corpse body, or for example the head, or most part of the body, so therefore that carry contamination. But if you have just one bone, it's not contaminated. So you see the measure of barley that's applied not only to a description of the Eretz Israel, but also in a measurement of law of purity. Then the third one, geffen. Geffen is how we make a wine, is from the vine, right? So that's applied to also law of measurement when it's come to Nazirite. Nazirite meaning someone who commit himself for, it can be a variety of reasons, to avoid himself in a certain, either a certain period of time or certain measurement of Nazirite, which is avoiding yourself from drinking wine, etc. So what is the minimum measurement? כדי רביעית יין לנזיר. So it's a machloket in Rashi and Tosfot what is exactly involved, but it's either 86 cc or 150, but it basically if he exceeded that amount, either he deserved to get malkot, and Tosfot said that it's has to be in a certain condition, which means Tosfot said that it's not involved in direct drinking wine. It can be even eating a cluster, eating a grapes, that by, again, you measure it. If you squeeze those grapes to some utensils, then you measure the amount, and therefore you know exactly how much is involved. Tosfot learned it from something that he wrote also in Sukkah, page 6. Now we just turn to page 4b. Now we go to the next one. You remember we talked about Eretz Israel, the beauty, and we said grain and barley and wine. Now the next one is te'ena, it's fig. So what is fig? Listen carefully how beautiful it is. It's not only a description of one of the 7 species, it's also want to express to us the value, the importance of carrying on Shabbat. Because the Torah did not tell us what is the minimum amount if someone carried on Shabbat that he is in violation. So they said, כגוגרת להוצאת Shabbat. You remember we said that someone who did it with warning, and 2 witnesses is skila, if not then is karet, and if it's unwittingly it's a sin offering. So tell me, what is the minimum measure that if one carries from one domain to another, from public to private and vice versa, he is under violation? Okay. The answer is, this is the amount, the fig dry. So again, you see that less than that it's exempt, but it's prohibited to do it, but it's still exempt. But the fig dry, that's the amount of minimum of carrying. So it shows you not only the importance of the mitzvah of not carrying from one domain to another, but also it tells you clearly, unequivocally, that this is the amount. This is less than that, you're already exempt. Next one is pomegranate, rimon. Again, rimon is not only tells you the beauty of the species in Eretz Israel. They bring you a Mishnah in Tractate Kelim. The Mishnah said in Kelim, in page 17a, Kol ba'alei batim shiuram kerimonim. So it means you have your honor of, let's say, if you are a businessman, you are a merchant, or you are honor of something, and there is a hole in the utensil. So there are certain situations, is the hole, it's you can use it. But the other situation you give up, and you just either throw it or give it away, etc. When is that? Make it unsellable or unusable.
As utensils.
As utensils. So if they have the size of pomegranate. So again, this is something that we put a measurement in order to define, Tosfot said, a measurement of utensils, which apply to many areas in halachot. The Meiri said that since is no buyer for that, so usually the owner gets rid of them. But that's again is derivative in a sense of measurement from that line in the Torah. And then number 6, we said Eretz Zeit Shemen Udvash. Eretz shekol shirotei hazeitim. You see the land that everything is by zayit, by dry fig. What does that mean? They said, "Kol shiura zakratach va'ikar anadeh." Maran la'amar she'eretz sherov ziyodei hazeitim, which means there are a lot of things in halacha that involve with kezait, when involve inside an olive.
Size, right?
Yeah. So, for example, if someone is in violation of eating non-kosher food, so there has to be in the size of kezait to be under violation. So if he ate fat, blood, left over from the consecrated offering, dead body of animals, impure animal, it's all of that law of impurity in the meat, or law impurity of a corpse. All of that apply to the size of kezait, and you hear the size of kezait many times, but the derivative word of kezait is from the word zeit shemen that comes from the description of the 7 species of Eretz Israel. And then we go to the last one, number 7, Dvash. What is dvash? Dvash literally is honey. But we know that dvash applied to palm trees. Okay? So dvash applied to kotevet agasa Yom HaKippurim. If someone during the Day of Atonement, he is in violation by eating, what is the violation? So if he did it intentionally, violated Yom Kippur, has to have a minimum side that consider that is doing a violation if it was intentional. If it was unintentional, you need to bring a sin offering. So that apply to amount of what? Amount of one of the date of the palm tree in very simple way. For sure, there is a special book by Rabbi Chaim Beinish. It's called The Measurement Midot V'Shiurei Torah, that he brought a very clear, not only picture, but a description what exactly the measurement, because it's sometimes a different opinion among the rabbis when it's come to a practical halacha. But you see here, if someone ate on Yom Kippur less than that, is exempt, but prohibited to do it, but he's exempt from punishment or from bringing a sin offering if it's below then that measurement, which is the vash, which is the palm tree one date. So you see that what we have here all wrap up is a measurement that used from the text of the Torah of the 7 species that Eretz Yisrael would bless, not only as a description of the land, but also a description of measurement that apply to a lot of halachic ramifications. So they said, now we're back to our question. Rav said that all of that it's halacha leMoshe miSinai. We learned that as a tradition for Moses in Sinai. Here you see a source that tells us that it's not a tradition for Moses in Sinai, but it's direct ramification from the text. So the Gemara responded and they said, how do you know that that's what Rav Hanan said? It's definite. V'tiz bi'ara, you may say shiurim michtav ktivei. The measurement, it's written there. For example, the measurement of the corpse. Ela hilchetaninu ve'asmechinu rabanan akrai. The measurement is the tradition that we receive halacha leMoshe miSinai, the tradition that Moses in Sinai. As the Rav said, Rav Hanan come in and he want to elaborate on that. So he elaborate from that line of the land that has the 7 species as a supported point, a smachta that wants to prove or strengthen the point that we said earlier. That's the way the Rambam understands it as well. Now we go to the next one. We said chatzitzin deoraita ninu, meaning, as we explained, when you go to a mikveh, especially women in our days, after the period and they counting the 7 days, then they duck in the mikveh. So there have to be a direct connection between the body and the mikveh, the water. There's a big raining water, and it's a water of the mikveh with no partition. There is no chatzitza, separation. So therefore, dichtiv, the Torah said clearly in Vayikra, in Leviticus 15, v'rachatz b'mayim et kol besaro, that the person who is finishing at that time is have a discharge, the semen that come out of a body, he needs to duck entire body, not just the one spot, but the entire body in the water. So what we derive from that? Shelo yeheh davar chotzet ben besaro lamayim, that it shouldn't have any chatzitza, any addition part between the person's body and the water. So what we learn? B'mayim b'mei mikveh. Mayim has to be a mikveh, a pure ritual bath, that it's like mayim chayim, the spring water. Kol besaro, entire body, mayim shekol gufo ole b'hem. Entire body, which means that water that touch directly to all of his body, not part and part and part. V'kamayim. What's the measurement? Again, we back to our subject of measurement. So the measure is a amma is the handbreadth by amma times 3, and wrap it up in the size of 40 se'ah. So again, this is Gemara in Psachim 109, and it's a machloket what is exactly the measurement in our days. But in the very basic idea is here we try to say that there is a proof directly from the text. Unlike the word of Rav that said that it's only halacha leMoshe miSinai. So now again, it's a basically challenge what we said earlier, because earlier we said that it's halacha leMoshe miSinai. So the Gemara responded and said, Ki itzri chilcheta lis'aro. So the truth is that the law of chatzitza, of separation, we learn from the text. But the halacha leMoshe miSinai, it's come to teach us that it's not only in a person's flesh itself, it's also applied to his hair, which in a way, it's, depending how you look, it's either attached or detached from his body, because it's hair. וכדרבא בר אבונה, דאמר רבא בר אבונה נימחת קשורה חוצצת. If a person just have a hair knot, one, it's already considering a chatzitza, a separation, if it's tight.
One
because
tied in a knot,
right. שלוש אינן חוצצות. Why? Because it's hard and it's not tight properly. So, and שתיים איני יודע. If it's two, I'm not so sure. So the Gemara asks, שערון נא מדאורייתא ניהו. He also, the whole din of chatzitza, when it's applied to a hair, make it invalid when it duck in the water, so you can learn it from the line, from the sentence. So why you need halacha leMoshe miSinai for that? The Tanya, ורחץ את כל בשרו. He need to wash his entire body. את הטפל לשערו. By merely saying another superfluous word, et, looks like no need, we learn from that something that is indirect connected to his blood, to his to his flesh, which is vezeu sehar, his hair. That in a way it looks like it's detached, but it's attached, but it's not part of his flesh itself. So here we see here, back to our old question, we see that we derive the idea of chatzitzin, of separation, from the Torah directly, and it's not halacha leMoshe miSinai. So how come we said that all the measurement is halacha leMoshe miSinai? Again, the response, and they said, כי אתה הלכתה, they come to teach us, לרובו ולמיעוטו, למקפיד ושאינו מקפיד. וכדי רבי יצחק אמר רבי יצחק דבר תורה, רובו מקפיד עליו חוצץ, ושאינו מקפיד עליו אינו חוצץ. Usually, people are very scrupulous, very fastidious, very careful with certain part, and certain part they don't pay attention. So for example, if it's a little dirt on a person's body, it's a little something. So basically, if a person don't care for that, it's not considering a partition, a chatzitza, a separation. But if it's something that people care, they said that's different. V'gazru al rubo, the sages put a decree on something that have most of his body, she'eno makpid, that is, maybe a person doesn't much care for that. When he duck in the water, why is the decree? Mishum rubo makpid, v'amiuto makpid, mishum rubo makpid. Because it can go either way, either because most of the time, as long as you have one of these conditions, they put a decree. So they said, v'ligzor namer miuto she'eno makpid, mishum rubo makpid. So therefore, you should make this decree in both ways. Iname mishum rubo she'eno makpid. So you can go either way, and you extend the decree. So the Gemara said, "Hi gufa gzera v'anakum gzera legzera." It's not enough that we have this important halacha when it's come to chatzitza, that the person is scrupulous in something that he is that it's considering already chatzitza, and it's only rabbinic decree. So you don't need to add more decree to our decree that it's already existed. So now we go to the next one. Next one we said mechitzot. You remember we talked about the mavoi. And now we go mechitzot deoraita ninu, which means the whole idea of making this partition in a 10 handbreadth, you learn from the Torah. Now it's a big question again: is that halacha leMoshe miSinai or is it from the Torah? The Amar Mar, the Mar said in Braita, this is Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 7a. They said when it's talk about the art of covenant, so they said Aaron Tisha. The art of covenant that was in the tabernacle, his size was tishat tefachim. Tefach is the handbreadth, and it's like 9 handbreadth, because the Torah said in the book of Shmot in Exodus 25, they said v'kaporet tefach, that they said there that it's amau mechza, that it's all together it's 9 tefachim, and the kaporet is one tefach, 1 handbreadth. Harei kan asara, if you wrap it up, 1 plus 9, it's 10. So again, the old question, you see a source in the Torah, so how come you tell me that this mechitzot is halacha leMoshe miSinai? So the Gemara said, no, lo tzricha ela leRabbi Yehuda damar amat bina bama בת שישה, amat kelim b'ama batish'a. So this go by the Rabbi Yehuda, that he said that it's a two type of amot. It's one large and one small. So when it's come to the building the tabernacle, there are some situations that we said it is a large one and some a small one. For example, when you talk about the wood part or the wrapping part of the Mishkan, it's called yeriot. So that's used the large measurement of 6. If you talk about utensils, it's different. Like the table, the altar, and other things, that it's in a small one. It's like the 5. So therefore, that's the difference, and you need to have halacha leMoshe Sinai. Rabbi Meir amar kol ha'amot hayu benoniyot. Rabbi Meir hold that all different measurement of the tabernacle, when it's come to the amot, it's all a medium point, which means if you talk amma that is the size of 6, so you can learn the measurement of partition from the heights of the Ark of Covenant and from the kaporet. So ma'ika lemeimar. So back to our subject. We learn it from the Torah, and it's not halacha leMoshe Sinai. So they said, לרבי מאיר כי הייתה הלכתה לגוד וללבוד ולדופן עקומה. So we said that that's applied to 3 things. Number 1 to a good, number 2 to lavud, number 3 to דופן עקומה. So good is a extending partition in the upward and downward. The second one, it's called lavud. Lavud is a joining part, and the ofen akuma is a curved wall. Again, look at this picture. This part, it's a curved wall in the sukkah. So this makes the schach invalid, okay? Because if it's less than arba amot, so it's considering as part of that. Otherwise, it make it invalid. So all of that, we learn it indirectly as halacha leMoshe Sinai. So now we said, היה גבוה מ-20 מובא למערתו כמה ממעט. If this mavoi, everyone can see the picture? Okay. This is let's say it's a development or whatever you call it, public domain, private domain, and you have here, you see these people, the small people walking, and you see this very high size, and this is the heiker, which is the cross beam you put. So he said, if this mavoi, this alleyway, it's above the 20 amot, 20 handbreadth, which is, how much is it?
20 amot is about 30 feet.
30 feet, okay. Uba lema'ato, he wants to make it less than 20. So here, if you look carefully, there are several options. What are they? You can put something on the bottom, you can put something on the top. So they ask, if you want to take the halal, the space under that, and he wants to make it smaller, kama mema'et, in order to make this mavoi proper, because we said it has to be up to the 20. So they said, kama mema'et, kama detzarich le. What's the question? Whatever you need, you reduce. So they said, ela rochbo bekama. What is the width side? How big in order to get in? Rav Yosef amar tefach. Rav Yosef said that it's a 1 tefach, 1 handbreadth. Abaye amar arba'a. Abaye said that there has to be 4. So if you look carefully here, that's called itztaba. You see this little hole in this wall. That's called itztaba. According to Rav Yosef, it's 1 tefach. According to Abaye, 4. Lema behaka mifligei. This is the machloket. The man de amar tefach, the one who said that it's enough with handbreadth, that it's Rav Yosef. Kasavar mutar lishtamesh tachat hakora. He hold that in that case you can use it under this korah. What does that mean? You don't need to reduce it. You don't need to reduce it. You can walk. Now, here is the issue. What's the issue? If people recognize that or not. Because you see, let's turn to page 5, just few lines. So it said, Uman de amar arba'a, and one who hold that it has to be 4, kasavar asur lishtamesh, tachat hakora, you cannot carry under that part. Why? Because this korah not allow direct part that is under that at all. Why? There are several explanations. So you see the explanation. They said, "Lo, everyone said that you're allowed to go under that." One said that the issue here is you need to see it, you need to recognize that it's a mechitza, that is a partition. And The other one said that it has to be just in the fourth corner, but it's not coming down. So therefore, when he made it in a way, in order to recognize that as a petition, you have to have foundation, and therefore you need to have 4 according to Abaye. Another explanation to this disputation between Rav Yosef and Abaye, if it's 1 or 4 handbreadth. The Kule Alma, regardless if Rav Yosef and Abaye Kora Mishum Eker, this part, the cross beam, is in order to recognize that is a separate domain. We dispute in a sense of what exactly you recognize. You recognize the bottom or you recognize the top? Because let's face it, how many people lift up their head and look at the top and recognize it? Not everyone. So therefore, the Marsav of Rav Yosef hold Amrinan Heker Shel Mata, Keker Shel Mala. The way that you recognize the bottom is the top. And Umar Savar and Abaye hold Lo Amrinan. We don't say that the way you recognize the bottom is the same as you recognize the top. So therefore, he requested the size of 4 tfachim. Abaye. V'ibaitem, the last one, the Kule Alma Kamrinan, which is both Rav Yosef and Abaye hold Heker Shel Mata Keter Shel Mala, that you recognize the bottom is the same as you recognize the top. The fear is that he is going to reduce. Abaye said that by the merely fact that too many people walk there and make it small and small and small and small, he will make it below than 1 handbreadth. And therefore, people don't even pay attention, and they start carry inside and out because they don't notice that it's the whole heiker, the whole recognition, the whole thing. So therefore, he said that's the reason you need to have it. So in short, the Rav Yosef point of view, he says, don't worry about it. If people see that. People soon you see people recognize and tell each other, especially the public domain. The Abaye said no, you need to have 4 because otherwise people totally disregarded. Now we go to a practical halachot. The first subject that we discussed today was the measurement. It's called shiurim. So this is Rambam, Sefer Kedusha Hilchot Ma'achalot Asurot, and he said the measures regarding to various Torah prohibition are halachot transmitted to Moshe Rabbeinu from Sinai. So according to the Torah law, one is liable for punishment only if one transgress with the prohibited measure. But if one intentionally transgress with less than the requisite measure, one is punished with malkot, administered by a rabbinic degree. Then we talk about the measurement of the house. So one who enters a house that is plagued with leprosy and who is dressed in unusual manner contact ritual impurity immediately. However, his clothes contain impurity only if he remains in the house for the duration of time required to eat a half a loaf of bread. Remember, we said that this is a normal time necessary to eat a 3-egg bout of wheat bread with a relish. This, if his clothes or jewelry were his hand, they took contact impurity immediately after entry. So that's the whole idea that bone the size of grain of barley. That's again measurement. We also discussed measurement of Nazirite. We said that a Nazirite who drink a quarter log of wine or wine produce, again he deserves a malkot. Also we said when it's carrying on Shabbat, we said one who carry food fit for humans from one domain to another is liable for carry at least a measurement of a dry fig, a fig bark of food. It's called goger. And also in a vessel belonging to homeowners, we said that this is size of pomegranate. We said in eating Yom Kippur, one is liable for eating on Yom Kippur only if he eats an amount of food equal to the size of large date. And we said the measurement of also when immersing in the mikveh, when one immerses in a ritual bath in a mikveh, to purify himself, he must immerse the entire body. At the same time, in addition, he must be nothing to interpose between his body and the water. And we said also the measurement of the mikveh, to be suitable for purification, the mikveh, the ritual bath, must measure a cubit in width and cubit in depth and 3 cubits in height. The volume has to be 40 seah, etc. So again, we talk about chatzitza, interpositions with regard to hair, and we explained that the person immersing it, it's a different size that make it a chatzitza. We explain also that interpositions are particularly, which means that's a Shulchan Aruch Yerodea 198. They said anything of any size that intervenes between one's body and water of a ritual bath constitutes an interposition if most people are particular about it and will remove it from their bodies. If only the person's immersion is always particular about this kind of interposition, then it constitutes an interposition that the person or for that person, and any substance that covers most of the body constitutes an interposition even if people are usually not particular about it. One should not immerse with foreign substance on one's body lechatchila for the purpose of becoming pure. For example, in the case of a woman that is nida, even if the substance is not constitute an interposition. Also, we learn the halacha of diminishing the heights of cross beam. We said when it's come to the mavoi in L'chot Shabbat, if a cross beam across the entrance to an alleyway to a mavoi is more than 20 cubits off the ground, the alleyway can be rendered feet for carry within by raising a portion of the ground under the cross beam. And we said the width of the raised section must be at least a handbreadth. That's Rav Yosef, if you remember. Since he was a Abaye teacher, and the Gemara discussed that agrees with his position that the Rambam extend Rabbeinu Yonatan and others. So that's basically Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 363. The last halacha I would like to share with you is Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 365. If you have the cross beam and you need to utilize the area beneath the cross beam, one is permitted to make use of an alleyway including the area under the cross beam itself. And we said cross beam across the entrance to an alleyway is not considered a partition but only a conspicuous marker. So therefore, if it's a conspicuous marker, you have the heker, you have the conspicuous marker above and the conspicuous marker below. So therefore, most of the opinions say that people recognize it as a different domain.
Shula